To Milkshake Monday. This is Thanksgiving week, and I just wanted to say happy Thanksgiving to all of you that are joining. I want to let you know that if you see some Christmas stuff, I can't think of the last time that I had Christmas things up before Thanksgiving, but praise be to God, my young daughter has been encouraging us to move forward in Christmas. So we got some Christmas decorations up and I'm excited to see them. But we can't rush through Christmas before we get to Thanksgiving, y'all. We got to be thankful. So tonight we are going to talk about Thanksgiving, Grumbling to Grateful, episode 321. Now, let me tell you something. I'm excited about, like I said, I'm excited about Thanksgiving. I'm excited about the prospect of Christmas, Lord willing, if we were to see it. But let me tell you that seasonal disorders for people who get sad or depressed or lonely or have kind of emotions that are making you feel uncomfortable during these holidays is a real event for many. And I know that my late husband spoke over the pulpit one time how that was a struggle for him around Thanksgiving, Christmas time, but really hit it December. Now, in our first year of marriage, I didn't know that about Reverend Helm. It kind of surprised me that he was in a funk. And I was like, what is up? But then he said he had to start going to the Lord in prayer because he didn't want to have that. But I can see how people do get that way. Even as I, as a widow of 3 years already, approach another holiday of Thanksgiving where my husband, my friend, my children's father and brother, and all the things he was to so many are approaching another Thanksgiving, it does tinge at my heart, coupled with the fact that my big sister is not here. And this is the first time that our family is not going to have my sister Yvonne. So that hurts me a little in so many different ways, hearing a sermon or hearing music or just seeing something and just thinking and appreciating that there are people, yours included, who are not here, that every holiday that comes, it brings some reflection of memory, of longing, of hopeful, some hopeful things that you wish you could have had more time. But the reality is that the Lord knows our time, our beginning, middle, and end. So I say that to say that for those who may be listening, and this is a tough time, God is near. God sees, he hears, and he is merciful and kind. And he knows at whatever stage all of our hearts are. And when I say stages, because some of us are in areas of brokenness. Some of us are in full joy. And I got that. I'm happy for you. But there are people who are going through some things at the end of the year with uncertainty. But we can be certain that our Lord loves us, that he cares for us. So as we look to the time frame that we say is for Thanksgiving, my pastor this week coined Thanksgiving, that we should be in an attitude of gratitude, but we know the reality that we're not always in that grateful attitude. So I wanted to talk about this because in reality, grumbling, complaining, murmuring comes in all kinds of shapes, sizes, attitudes. And some people you can't think that they're grumbling. You can't think because they just look like they're in such a good mood and attitude. Not so, ma'am. Not so, sir. In the Bible, I'm just going to show you a few examples of grumbling and complaining and being in a little bit off of sorts. Because I think when you have a certain disposition of what you think it looks like, God can see all of us. And we can put on the happy smile and the bright this and that. But God says, no. I know you're not happy with me. I know you're disappointed. I know you're frustrated. I know you're this. I know under your breath, inside that head of yours, that some things are going on. But I want to show tonight that there is a posture of going from grumbling to complaining as we are starting to mature in the things of the Lord. So think about this. In the very beginning of the Bible of Genesis 4, that the Lord himself said in a conversation with Cain, "Why has your countenance fallen?" His face showed that he was not pleased. He was angry. He was in a funk. He really was complaining that God had the nerve to reject something, to show him correction, to say that what he did wasn't good enough. But God saw in his face, and he sees in our faces sometimes. We can look like we're out of sorts in all kinds of ways, not just our frown, but we just have an attitude that God sees. For example, think of another thing. Hannah was a woman that we saw. We could say she was depressed, but she was upset about her stage of her medical condition of being infertile. She was upset that even in her husband having two wives, that she was being picked on. And she was crying. And she was not happy to the point her husband was saying, "What, I'm giving you everything. I'm giving you double portion. Why can't you just be grateful? Can't you be happy? Can't you?" But she was upset. It didn't say she was complaining, but her tears, she was not happy or content with her circumstances of her physical body and the infertility or that whole situation with that second wife. You might say that wasn't grumbling, but in her heart, she was not content. That's the level. When you're grumbling and you're discontent, you're frustrated. You may be frustrated with outward circumstances, but ultimately, God is the author and finisher of all of our faith. So if you're not happy and you're discontent that where you find yourself, where God has you, you're not pleased with that. And you want him to make a change quick, fast, and in a hurry. Well, think about the fact that Sarah offered Hagar, her bondwoman, to Abraham. She was barren. She was infertile. She was frustrated about the weight. God had made a promise, but she's like, okay, I'm in my 90s. My body is past the time. Here, go on and fix this thing. Go on and have her. Take Hagar, because I'm frustrated with God's timing. If you're going to have a baby, you ain't having it by me. Go on and take that woman and do your thing. She was frustrated. She didn't grumble that you saw out loud, but we're going to talk about Sarah tonight. That's going to be our major focus tonight. Think about the disciples. In the New Testament, the woman with the alabaster flask, when the woman came and broke that over Jesus to anoint him before his burial, they were pissed. They were upset. They were grumbling. You could have used that. That was worth almost a whole year's wages. Why did you do that? They said outward. They were frustrated and grumbling and complaining outwardly. And Christ had to say, wait a second, hold it. What she's done is going to be memorial to her forever. She has prepared my body because of the burial that's ahead. But those disciples, especially that thief and Judas, was not happy. And it didn't just say one disciple, it said disciples, plural. Think about in the Hebrews when they came out of the bondage of Israel and they complained and grumbled, one thing, you should have left us back there. We ain't got no food, got no drink. They get some food and drink, and then they're murmuring about the manna. We don't want this darn manna. We hungry, but now we tired of it. Give us something else. Then they get quailed. And it's, murmuring and complaining. Again, it was said, it wasn't just against you, Moses. This is a complaint against me, God Almighty. The grumbling that we are doing is not about what we see. It's who we don't see. We don't see who we're grumbling about. We're grumbling about God, what you've got going on in our life. We don't like it. And we want you to do something about it now. And we want to control God and what he's doing in our life. And God's not going to be controlled by anybody but himself. He's not getting off the throne while you have your pity party, fold your arms up and say, I'm not going to play, and take your ball and run. That's not going to work with God. Let's also look at the parents of Samson. They told Samson, can't you find somebody of your own people? Why you got to get those Philistines? Not just one wife, another wife. You don't think that they were upset that after he's taken the Nazirite vow from his womb, he's going and doing stuff and marrying outside his nation and doing stuff that he has no business doing? You don't think that there was some grumbling and complaining and concern about him back when mom and daddy were back in the house? Can you believe what that boy is doing? You know that they were not happy about that, and they told him, but he didn't listen. And how many parents got kids that do not listen? Now, the last one as example is, and we have a lot of this right now in real time, 21st century. Aaron and sister Miriam were not happy about Moses' wife, that Cushite woman. You know that she ain't one of us. They were upset about it to the point they wanted to take his leadership, and God had to say, slow the roll, put that hand in to see that leper in, leper out. Miriam, you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait because you got leprosy. You're going to be outside the camp because you went, You're not trying to do something where God has anointed Moses to be in charge, and you and Aaron are scheming because you really can't stand the other race of that woman. That's why you said that Cushite woman that he married. But we got these same examples happening every day of the week in the 21st century. Do you have parents that are frustrated with children? Yes. Do you have people that don't like other races in their team? Do you have people that are frustrated with their health? With their health of their family? I could talk about Joe's wife. Curse God and die. You could be the wife of somebody sick. You could be the person that's sick yourself, like Hannah and Sarah going through infertility, or being, chastised, or they say bullying today. All kinds of things could be happening in your life, and you could want to grumble. But in tonight's lesson about Sarai, who changes to Sarah, there is a change that God has that's more than her name change. It's her posture change. I got to change this camera because I need to relax, and I got it so close to them things that I want to change. Now I can rest in my chair. When we're going to go to Genesis 12, most times when I take this walk through Genesis, I focus on Abram. Tonight, I want to focus on Sarah, because Sarah is going through a time span of Genesis 12 to Genesis 21, where she is a woman that at the end of Genesis 21, she's in her 90s. So I want you to understand that her mental, her medical, her spiritual condition is evolving. That you're going to find that she's going to leave when the Lord says to Abram, I want you to leave your country and your family. You're going to see these verbs. And he leaves, and he took his wife Sarah and Lot. So the first passage, she's being taken. In another passage that we're going to read in that same chapter, we're going to see again that she's been taken because of her beauty to be with a Pharaoh. And then when the Pharaoh realizes she's somebody's wife, he's going to send her away. So she's going to be taken twice and sent away. Do you think as a woman, I know we put all these people on pedestals, but I want you to imagine Sarah as a woman, could be yourself. You're leaving your house, you don't know where you're going, leaving your country, you're going with your husband and your nephew, your Lot, that you've been raising. You don't have a kid, but Lot is your relative based on on Abram's brother and him dying, and y'all taking on that responsibility. But you're leaving, and you don't have no say. Back then, these women had no say. They were in that culture. And even as I go and I see different cultures coming into the United States of America, I see how the Muslim community, their women don't have any say. Very little say, where they have to follow the direction ultimately of everything the husband wants. Well, in this case, you're going to see in Genesis 12, the Lord's going to speak to Abram, but Sarah has no choice. She's going obediently with her husband. And she will be blessed, but I'm just telling you, as things are happening, you have to understand that when a man comes to tell his wife, even if it's an anointed man, hey, we got to go. Where are we going? Any woman, where are we going? God says, go. He hadn't explained where we're going, but we're going to go. So Genesis 12 says, now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make of you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now, the blessing is being spoken to Abram, but part of this blessing is falling on Sarah, because he's got married to her. So some of this, but for now, she's not going to see this. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abram took, that first verb, Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions. So that's a collective, all of their possessions. It didn't say his possessions, it's their possessions that they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran. Look, it's a mutual thing. It's a collective family. They had done it, acquired in Haran, and they set out to go to the land of Canaan. Jump down to verse 10. The lies about who she is. Yes, she is his half sister. That is a half truth. But for the sake, Abram wanted to hold and protect his life. But she's being carted off for 75 years that he's 75. She's probably 10 years younger, as we've heard before in studies. 65 years she's been his wife and supposedly only been with that man. But now because of her beauty, she's being taken to possibly be with the Pharaoh who could actually have sex with her. You don't think there was some trepidations under her? She may not have said it in this passage, but you don't think some things were going on where he's saying, tell this lie. I'm sure he probably said, tell this little white little lie. And you go on, and when they took her, she didn't know what was going to happen to her. You don't think some trepidation, some uncertainty, some discombobulation was going on? Big word that means freaking out. Now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there. For the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai, his wife, I know that you're a woman beautiful in appearance. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but they will let you live. Say, you are my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. Really, it's for her sake, right? Because she'd be so distraught. But it's okay to pretend and be taken away. Okay. When Abram entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. Even at 65, girl had it going on. And when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh. Can you imagine the absolute beauty you must have seen in Sarai at this time? That all of the king's beautiful harem at this point had to be the most beautiful ladies of the land of Egypt. Egypt was not small, but her coming in and people talking about her beauty at 65, that they had to show her to the Pharaoh, that they kept talking about this beautiful woman. But this beautiful woman was barren. So everything beautiful is not always content on the inside. She still was not fertile after 65 years. And that was a big thing in the nation of the Hebrews. It says, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Jump down to verse 20. After it's found out, the Lord is setting some stuff against the Pharaoh and his people because of Sarai and her being in that proposition where the Pharaoh could have her and physically touch her, and that wasn't the plan of God. It says, and Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, meaning Abram, and they sent him away with his wife and all that they had. So she got taken away, and now she's being sent away. Now, God's promise is discussed in Genesis 15. Read that in your own private time. He speaks all the promises of Abram to Abram, what he already sees as the future. He already understands what's going to happen with Sarai, who's going to become Sarah, and with Abram, who's going to become Abraham. But there's a process of time going on. And this promise about heritage and, oh, you're going to be a great this, and oh, your name is going to be, it's not happening. It's not being seen in the visual eye. And the thing about us, we want to see things with our natural eye, but the Lord is seeing things supernaturally in the eternities of past, present, and future. So in Genesis 16, verses 1 through 4, now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. So she had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, behold, now the Lord has prevented me from having children, from bearing you children. It's the Lord's fault. He's the one that stopped me. I can't have any children. Go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her. She was trying to have her hand in the pot of what God has said to help God. Even what she says about the Lord not allowing her to bear children is a grumble. She's acting like she's content. Hey, I'm going to let you just have my girl, go and have sex with her. But This is bothering her. This is not, she's not showing like Cain was her countenance, but her behavior, her actions, her attitude is showing that, this is bothering her. He's got to have an error. Let me see if I can help God get this done, because God is taking too long with whatever promises he's talked from Genesis 12, Genesis 15. Let me help God. Let me give him some help. It says, and Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. So that reinforced that the problem was Sarah. Sarah had said that God had kept her from bearing, had prevented her, the words had prevented her from having children. But when you see your husband go to have sex with another woman, your bondservant, and she's pregnant, it's no question. It wasn't him. They didn't have all this in vitro things to do testing to check all that stuff out. But when he conceives with another woman, it's her. Now, you have to imagine that if this is a process where he's 75 and she's possibly 65, they've been married for quite a long time. He's been faithful to her all this time. But now something's changed to the point that she's trying to say, you need to have a child, and I'm not the one that's going to do it for you. Yeah, God said this, but I'm not the one. You don't think that was bothering her? You don't think that there was something on the inside that wasn't pleased by that whole circumstance of her not being able to Hagar her own idea? Well, you may not. You're going to see it. In chapter 17, verses 15 through 21, I don't want you to focus now on her age. I want you to focus on this weight. This time elapsed not for the age, because she's been old from the beginning. He's been old from the beginning. But old man conceived a kid already with the young girl Hagar. And she's going to have a baby, and had a baby by now. So God said to Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah. There's something in the transformation that God is trying to say to this woman, Sarai. We're going to have a change. We're going to have a change in what I already know is happening with you, where you said, I'm preventing you. I've already told my manservant what I plan to do with you both. But now you've gotten in your mind, I'm not doing nothing for you, that you're going to stay barren, even though I've told my manservant in Genesis chapter 15 what's going to happen. You don't believe it. Maybe he didn't believe it either, because he listened to Sarah, but that's God knew was going to happen. So he's going to have a name change for Sarai. Some of us need some changing of transformation. Instead of being the girl with the funky attitude, how about the girl with some faith? Instead of the man that's always got his bottom lip to the floor, why don't you have your joy of the Lord about you? Some of us need some name changes about what we're being called. She's going from Sarai to Sarah. It says here, Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her. Because she doesn't believe that he's going to bless her. She believes from what you saw in Genesis 16 that the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. The Lord is against me. The Lord is holding something back that he knows that she wants. Every woman back then in that culture, wanted a child. But the Lord is preventing her specifically and letting her own bondservant have the thing that she's wanted. She's relished to have a child. The Lord is saying he's going to bless her. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give. Look at this. What is he getting ready to give her? Because guess what? God knows what you want. God knows what you've been murmuring and complaining and not saying out loud, but in your heart, in your mind, that thing that's been discontent inside of you. Now, maybe she said it to Abraham. Yeah, I'm sure she's wanted a baby. She's disappointed. She's cried many tears about it. But God is saying something directly to her now. Moreover, I will give you a son by her. Not Hagar, not the bondservant, not an extra bondservant that you're going to, by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of people shall come from her. I want you to understand, we are not We're only seeing the word of God, which tells you so much about how he needed to reinforce confidence in his promises to her specifically. That internally she was not content with this situation, but she wasn't also trusting. And that's when you find that you are discontent and grumbling. You're not happy. You're not believing God for his promises, where he's saying this so directly to her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed. Isaac means laughter, but Abraham laughed first. I always say that when I teach this. Abraham laughed. You are talking about my old wife that all these years, all these decades can't have no baby. I just kicked boots and now with Hagar, we got a baby. But now you're talking about Sarah and you want to change her name? That's not going to change the fact she's old. She's dusty. He's laughing at God, what God just said. Some of us laugh at God because we think he can't do the impossible. That God says in his word it's impossible for him to lie. So he just told Abraham something. Abraham hadn't. I mean, he's not believing God to the point he's laughing. Then Abraham fell on his face. That's falling out laughter. You know, if you had a comedian, if somebody's falling down on the floor laughing, it's so absurd. He can't believe it. Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, now that's why God is knowing all this internal language of us saying to ourselves, and said to himself, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? He just had a kid, so that wasn't impossible. Shall Sarah, he said the new name, shall Sarah with the new name, with the old body, with the probably past their time in the menopause stage, shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abram said to God, oh, that Ishmael, because he's here, Adam done it. Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. God said, no. He has to change our understanding, our misunderstanding, our thinking we know better than him. In our grumbling, in our saying to ourselves, in our pontificating that we know better than God, God has to come back and say, he didn't say fool. He didn't say, did you not hear me? He said, no, but Sarah, your wife, not your bondservant, not Ishmael, Sarah. He said Sarah clearly. Did y'all hear Sarah? I don't think any of us were misunderstanding that God just pointed her out to say, Sarah, your wife. No, but Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. After you done laughed and fallen out of your face, which means laughter. You laughed. I'm going to make you laugh. I'll make you have a son named Laughter. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah, in case this dummy don't get it. I'm sorry, he's a wonderful man of God that God speaks to, Father Abraham, right? But he has to say it one last time. Whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. Genesis 18, 1 through 15. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want you to see something. The husband laughed first. The husband doubted first. The husband had to be set straight multiple times, more than once, about the situation with his wife. There was grumbling. There was doubting, disbelief. Are you for real, God? Are you really for real? From Genesis 12 to 15 to 16 and now 17, and now we're getting ready to jump into 18. And God going to have another conversation of what he just talked about in 17. But this time, sister, Sarah going to be listening. And I'm sure sis had to have heard from Abraham at this point what God had told him, not just once, that we're going to have this promise, we're going to have this situation of descendants. But now there's more detail. There's more meat on this bone. So when you hear this laughter, it's laughter because it's a yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. It's not as you would think the grumbling is, but when you are laughing at what God says, you are saying, I don't believe you. You are crazy. You are out of your mind. I can't believe what you're saying. It's not going to happen, God. It hadn't happened and it's not going to happen. And God sees that when he makes promises of, give me your tithes and offerings and I'll make, that he'll bless you, even though you may be you think of financial drought. I'm a living witness. God will bless you. Cup running over blessing. You just have to be faithful. Trust him. So we're in Genesis 18, verses 1 through 15. Now, there's a whole appearance of the Lord appearing to Abram by the oak tree. And he's going to ask Sarah to go make a meal. Because that is not what I want to focus on tonight, I want us to jump down to verse 6. And Abram went quickly into the tent to Sarah and said, quick, 3 seahs of fine flour. Knead it and make cakes. Need you to cook some stuff. We got company. It's the Lord. And Abram ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and goat, and gave it to a young man who prepared it quickly. He's like, get everything ready, fast, 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 in a hurry. Then he took curds and milk and the calf that he had prepared, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree while they ate. Now, I just want you to have the appreciation that God is so faithful to his word, because there's lack of belief from the husband from Genesis 17. And then you have the pre-incarnate Christ and the angels before they go take care of what they got to take care of in Sodom and Gomorrah. And they're getting fed very well. But there's a reinforcement to this message, and now it's going to be both husband and wife hearing this message. And why do I say grumbling to grateful? Because God can have us grumble over decades about something. Maybe we don't say it out loud, but we're frustrated, we're irritated, we're discombobulated, we're all kinds of issues underneath the surface that we're just disquieted. I'm speaking for myself too. I'm speaking for myself. So it says, they said to him, where is Sarah, your wife? They're using the new name. They're making clear, your wife. Ain't no mysterious Sarah that we're talking about in your concubines or all your people of your wife, Sarah. Name change. Where is she? And he said, she's in the tent. The Lord said, because he knew where she was, I will surely return to you about this time next year. And Sarah, your wife, so we're not getting it confused, because 17 wasn't confused and 18 ain't confused either. And Sarah, your wife, shall have a son. They're more specific now. Within a year about this time, a son. He'd already laughed, fallen out laughing, but now, here we go. And Sarah was listening, as a lot of us wives do. We be keeping our ears to the grindstone. What's up? What's going on? I know we're not supposed to be a part of the men's group, but she heard. And that's why Christ said, where was she? And Sarah was listening at the tent door behind him. Now, Abram and Sarah were old, advanced in years. The way of woman had ceased. Y'all know that means the periods, menstruation, that we have eggs to give for this little adventure. I'm not even talking about the physical doing it. I'm talking about, is there anything in there, in a little crevice hole up there somewhere, just waiting out there for 90-some years? Dust that thing off. So that part of her had stopped, had ceased to be with Sarah. So Sarah laughed to herself, saying, after I wish y'all could just think about this woman saying this. This is her. She's not grumbling in the typical sense, but she's saying, after I'm worn out, my stuff is gray. You know, she's beautiful, but my stuff is gray. That stuff has changed. Time changes things, ladies, if you don't know that yet. Time changes things. After I'm worn out, I even joke with Faith. Faith thinks we're going to have, I won't speak it out loud, but I'm saying I had to take care of an infant for 2 weeks, and it took me probably a month to recover. I'm not the same 20-year-old I was when I had my children. So in her 90s, after I'm worn out, and my Lord is old, he worn out too. Shall I have pleasure? Meaning pleasure of the baby, pleasure of how you get the baby? We're going to have pleasure now? The Lord said to Abram, why did Sarah laugh and say, shall I indeed bear a child now that I'm old? He don't know what she's saying. He don't know what she could be not even saying out of her mouth. She's saying it in that saying to yourself land of our head, of our thought life. That's when somebody says something dumb, you want to say it in your head like, you fool, you crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not saying she said it about God, but I know you say that when you hear somebody say something crazy. You may not say it out loud. You may hear somebody say it in church. Oh, you may say that dress don't look right. It's too tight. It's too high. That suit is too short. That man know that suit needs. I mean, you say all kinds of things in your head, but God heard her emotionally, mentally, spiritually. He heard her doubt and laugh. Not so different what her husband had just done, y'all. Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh. Just like some of us, I didn't complain. I didn't grumble. I wasn't upset with you, God. I was all right with how this thing went down. I was okay that you made me wait 5 years when I wanted it in 1. I was okay that my kids made me pull out my hair. I was okay. I knew you were going to come through. I knew they were going to get out of jail. All this stuff that you say, no, God, you got me wrong. God said, I ain't getting nothing wrong. You did. And that's what he does. She said a lie. Learned that from her husband. I did not laugh, for she was afraid. He said, no, but you did laugh. That's how God does it. He didn't come back yelling and screaming like some of us would do. He said, no, you did laugh. I know you're lying. I know what I know. I know the truth. It's impossible for God to lie. He can't deny himself and he can't lie. So he ain't going to take none of our lies. Jump to Genesis 21, verses 1 through 7, our last, where we're going to see that he has indeed, they have indeed, whether they said grumbling, laughing, falling down, not believing God, being impatient, all those things, they're now going to see the fruition of God's promise. Some of us, in due time, in due season, will see the manifestation of God's promises to us. We just have to be faithful to trust and to wait and to obey. Genesis 25 is going to see them change, not just their names from Sarai to Sarah, to Abram to Abraham, and promises being kept. Now they get to realize how wonderful things are. Genesis 21 verses 1 through 7 says, the Lord visited Sarah as he had said. And the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. Put your name in it. Anita, God is going to visit you like he said. God will do for you as he has promised. Pam, God will visit you as he has said. God will do for you, Pam, as he has promised. If we can start personalizing that promise, that trust every day. And when Satan comes to lie, you say, nope, God's promises are true. He will do what he says he will do when he says he will do it in his own time. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abram called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. She lied about that laughter, but God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. Can you believe what God can do? Can you believe nothing is impossible for God? And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. From being grumbling to grateful. That was a message of praise and gratefulness and thanksgiving about the son, laughter. She could laugh in her gratefulness because she saw God manifested. What are you thinking about in this season right now that we talk about Thanksgiving? Internally and spiritually and emotionally, what are you really grumbling about, some things that you're frustrated with God about? I don't know. I can't tell you those things. But I really would hope that you take the time during this Thanksgiving, during this time that we reflect on gratefulness. Have you spent some time thanking God, being grateful to God, but also opening up to God and letting him know? I'm going to be honest with y'all about a couple things. I have been emotionally eating, and I had noticed it's been probably in the last month, but really heavily last week. And I was like, what are you doing? I know how to eat properly. I know what nutrition and things, but boy, I love a Slim Jim. I do. A good Slim Jim every now and then. And just little things that I would buy and say, okay, you're buying them, therefore you know you're going to eat them. And I had to get along with the Lord, and I said, Lord, I think I am emotionally eating out of missing Rev, being hurt over Yvonne, hurt over Neil dying, and people in my life getting older and knowing what's ahead, possibly for myself and others. But I think I'm sad about it. And I wasn't acting sad. I wasn't being sad on the outside. And probably I wasn't grumbling as I thought, but I was upset. I was frustrated that I'm waiting probably longer than I expected for a new person to be in my life. But I even have this expression now that God has given me, love is coming. Love is coming to that person, from me to that person, but that person to me. But I was saying, when I wrote the chapter in A Leap of Faith, where loss and grief, there was a part of that discussion where in my pain and hurt of the grief and loss, it was only until, and I'm being very honest about this, it's not in the book, but I'm telling you this myself, when you see that passage of that launch pad, is that only when I started in the hollows of my pain of the loss of my husband, that I started going out on my patio and thanking God for the years I had Rev. Thanking God that I know there's some people in this world that have never had a love that I was blessed to have for 25 years. And I kept identifying thankful pieces of that relationship, experiences in that relationship, characteristics of him, things about our children that we love, rearing them together, things about him that I just was so grateful and thankful. And when I started to do that, it pierced that darkness of grief, that longing and loneliness of grief. And I can only tell you that when I realized the key to my getting out of some of the patches of grief was me starting to share with God gratefulness and thankfulness. And I wrote that passage in one of those about hopelessness, because I said, only when you start to do that, I don't know if that's for everybody, but I can tell you as a testimony, true and truth, that only when I started to get gratefulness to God of what he had given me. I was only focused on the loss of what was gone, what had transitioned away to heaven. Parts of me was grateful that he wasn't suffering, but that part of gratefulness never went past that part of not having him because he's not suffering. But I wasn't thanking God that he allowed me to have 25 absolutely fabulous years of love, of thoughtfulness, of kindness, of teaching, of laughter, of us just having a fabulous life together. And I was grateful. And even when it comes to my sister Yvonne, I'm 57, and my sister, showed me a level of love, of care, of friendship that I'm grateful for. And I miss her. And I miss Rev and I miss Neil. And I understand that those things aren't easy. And I'm not trying to make it seem like any of this with grief or the holidays is easy. But if we, as a family of God, the children of God, can just look up to our hills and thank our Father every day, every opportunity, that we got to spend some incredible moments and years and laughter and fun and great memories. We got some great pictures of the life that we've had with some wonderful people. Now, the Word of God teaches us the harvest is plenteous, the laborers are few. We as laborers have to be grateful and stop our grumbling and start to trust the promise keeper. We are going to pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest that he will bring more of us with great attitudes of love and gratefulness into this harvest to share who Christ Jesus is. Happy Thanksgiving. Lord willing, I will see you next week. I love you. I'm thankful for you guys. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving.